Have you ever wondered what happens when the spiritual awakening ends? So many people talk about the beginning of awakening, the moment everything changes, when the world feels alive with energy, when synchronicities appear everywhere and emotions rise to their peak. But what happens after that? What happens when the intensity fades, when the mystical experiences slow down, when the highs of enlightenment no longer flood your mind? Most people don't talk about this part, but this is where the real transformation begins. At first you might feel like something is wrong. The bliss that once filled your days seems to quiet down. The sense of oneness, the energy surges, the deep emotional shifts, they all start to settle, and for a moment you might even feel lost, as if the magic of awakening has disappeared. But the truth is, you're not losing anything. You are evolving. You are transitioning from the experience of awakening to the embodiment of it. When awakening first happens, it's like a storm, a powerful force that shakes everything loose, forcing you to see beyond the illusion, to question everything, to feel things you've never felt before. It is a necessary breaking apart, a dismantling of the old self. But storms don't last forever, and they aren't meant to. Eventually the waters calm, the sky clears, and what remains is something far deeper, far more stable, far more real than any spiritual high. You begin to notice that your emotions are no longer running wild. The intensity that once overwhelmed you begins to settle into something quieter, something still. You don't get swept away by every feeling anymore. There is a new kind of neutrality, a peaceful detachment, where emotions pass through you like waves, but they don't consume you. You are no longer controlled by them. You witness them, you allow them, and then you let them go. At first this might feel strange. You might wonder why you don't feel as deeply as before, why things that once triggered you now barely create a reaction. But this isn't numbness. This is freedom. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are no longer bound by the highs and lows of emotional turbulence. You are resting in something deeper. And then your body changes too. The exhaustion, the erratic sleep, the strange energetic shifts, slowly they begin to stabilize. You no longer feel like you're riding an uncontrollable wave of energy. Your sleep becomes more natural. Your appetite balances itself. The cravings for extreme diets, the sudden urges to purge or cleanse, those things begin to fade. Because now, your body isn't fighting to adjust anymore. It has already aligned. It has settled into the new vibration. And for the first time, you feel normal again, but a different kind of normal. A lighter, more effortless way of being. And then, something even more unexpected happens. The people in your life begin to shift. Some relationships fade naturally, as if the connection that once held them together no longer exists. Conversations that used to interest you now feel empty. Drama that once pulled you in now seems distant. And while some friendships grow deeper, others dissolve without resistance. Not because of conflict, not because of anger, but because they no longer resonate. At first this can feel like a loss. The people who once understood you may not anymore. The connections you once held on to may feel like they belong to a different version of you. But then you realize you are not here to hold on to what no longer aligns. You are here to grow, to evolve, to make space for relationships that nourish you, that reflect the new depth within you. And so you embrace the solitude, not as loneliness, but as a sacred space where you are no longer dependent on external validation. You no longer need people in the way you once did. You no longer seek approval, attention, or recognition, because the identity that once craved those things is dissolving. And with that dissolution comes an unexpected peace. The mind at first may resist this. It may ask, who am I now? What do I do? Because when awakening was new, it gave you a sense of purpose, a mission, a reason to seek, to understand, to explore. But what happens when the seeking ends? What happens when there are no more spiritual quests, no more concepts to chase? This is where many people struggle, because the mind wants a goal, it wants a direction. But the truth is, when the awakening ends, there is no destination. There is only this. There is only life. not as something to achieve, not as something to transcend, but simply as it is. And so your purpose changes. It is no longer about spiritual attainment. It is no longer about getting somewhere or becoming something. It is about living fully. Not from a place of attachment, not from a place of seeking, but from a place of presence. The smallest things become profound. The simplest moments become sacred. Washing the dishes, walking through nature, sitting in silence. All of it holds the same depth as the greatest spiritual realization. Because now you are no longer looking for something outside of this moment. You stop trying to explain your experience to others. You stop needing to justify where you are on your path. You stop feeling the need to convince anyone of anything. There is a quiet confidence in just being. You no longer need spiritual labels, no longer need to call yourself anything, because you have outgrown the need for identity itself. And this is when you realize the awakening never really ended, it just became something different, something deeper, something quieter. It is no longer an event, it is no longer an experience, it is simply you, living, breathing, existing, without resistance. And this is what true peace feels like. At first, this peace feels unfamiliar. The mind, so used to searching, so used to chasing, might whisper, "Is this it?" Because there are no more fireworks, no more mystical revelations shaking the foundation of your world, no more overwhelming surges of energy pulling you into new dimensions of thought and experience. Just stillness, just life. But soon you realize, this is not emptiness, this is wholeness. This is what all the spiritual highs were pointing to. The intensity, the visions, the breakthroughs, they were never meant to last forever. They were only ever glimpses, signposts pointing you towards something far greater than experience. They were guiding you home to something so simple, so ordinary, that the mind overlooked it for years. You are here, in this moment, and for the first time that is enough. There is no need to escape, no need to go anywhere else. The idea that something is missing, that there is something more to attain, dissolves. There is only this breath, this movement, this experience unfolding effortlessly, without a problem to solve, without a goal to reach. And this changes everything. Before, spirituality may have felt like an identity, a path you were walking, a transformation you were undergoing, something you could label and define. But now, there is no identity needed, there is no path, there is no destination, there is only presence. Full, open, effortless. And in this, something beautiful happens. You stop trying to be spiritual. You stop trying to maintain a certain mindset, a certain energy, a certain frequency. You stop trying to hold on to the feeling of awakening, because you realize you are awakening itself. It is not something you do, it is not something that happens to you. It is simply the unfolding of reality, moment by moment. You no longer judge yourself for being human. You no longer think that feeling sad, tired, or uninspired means you've fallen off the path. You stop comparing your experience to what it used to be, because you understand there is no used to be, there is only now, and now is always changing. You embrace life in a way you never could before, not because you have figured it all out, but because you no longer need to. You no longer need to justify your existence with meaning or purpose. You no longer need to cling to philosophies or ideologies to make sense of things, because everything is already as it should be. There is no longer an urgency to become something greater. The need for personal evolution, for self-improvement, for achieving some kind of ultimate wisdom fades. You realize you don't need to become anything, you only need to be, and being is effortless. You no longer seek intensity, because you understand that the greatest depth is found in simplicity. The most profound truths don't arrive in thunderous revelations. They whisper in the quiet moments. They reveal themselves in the way light filters through the trees, in the way laughter arises spontaneously, in the way your breath moves without effort. Everything is sacred now, not because you try to see it that way, but because you no longer separate anything from divinity. You don't need a special moment to feel connected. You don't need a grand experience to feel alive. It's all here, in the most ordinary things. In the sound of rain, in the stillness of an empty room, in the way the body moves without thought. And suddenly there is nothing to resist, no part of life that is unacceptable, no moment that needs to be different. You live fully, not by trying, not by striving, but by allowing joy, allowing pain, allowing the full range of human experience without grasping, without rejecting, without the mind interfering with its endless commentary. And when life does bring challenges, when difficulties arise, you no longer react with panic or resistance. You meet them with openness, with stillness, with a knowing that nothing is ever truly a problem, only an experience moving through you. The suffering that once controlled you no longer lingers. It arises, it is seen, it is allowed, and then it dissolves. You find that people's opinions of you no longer hold weight. The need to explain yourself, to be understood, to be validated, it disappears. You live as you are, without apology, without justification, without the need to be anything other than what you are in this moment. You may still have preferences, but they no longer define you. You may still have goals, but they no longer imprison you. You may still have thoughts, but they no longer pull you away from reality. Because you are no longer lost in the mind's illusion. You are here, fully. And the most beautiful thing, you do not feel superior. You do not feel enlightened, special, or set apart from others. You feel ordinary, but not in the way the mind once feared. You feel ordinary in the most divine, most natural way possible, because everything is as it should be, nothing more, nothing less. This is the true gift of spiritual awakening. Not the fireworks, not the intense experiences, not the moments of transcendence, but the return to simplicity, the return to yourself just as you are, without the need for anything more. And when you realize this, when you finally stop searching for what was never missing, when you surrender to the quiet, to the stillness, to the simplicity of life exactly as it is, you understand the awakening never truly ends, it only deepens, and in that depth there is only peace. And so life moves on, but now it moves differently, not because the external world has changed, but because you have. The same sun rises, the same wind blows, the same people move through their lives, but you no longer see them in the same way. There is no longer a filter of resistance, of judgment, of attachment. You are no longer seeing life through the lens of the mind's expectations. You are simply seeing. The silence within you is no longer something you try to find. It is something you are. Even in the midst of noise, even in the middle of activity, there is a stillness that does not leave. The endless need to do something, to become something, fades into the background. Because now, you understand that nothing is missing. Nothing ever was. You stop trying to hold on to the feeling of awakening because you recognize that awakening is not a feeling. It is not a peak experience. It is not something that comes and goes. It is simply reality seen without distortion. And with this, you stop trying to stay awakened. You stop trying to maintain some perfect state of consciousness. There is no longer a version of yourself that you must preserve. You don't have to be the enlightened one, the spiritual one, the wise one. You don't have to prove anything to yourself or to others. You just live. And this simple, unremarkable way of being is where the true transformation happens, because for the first time, life is effortless. Not in the sense that challenges never arise, but in the sense that you no longer resist them. You meet life as it comes, without needing it to be different. You don't avoid emotions. When sadness comes, you feel it fully, but without suffering. When joy comes, you embrace it, but without clinging. When uncertainty arises, you move with it rather than against it, because now you know. You are not these passing states. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your past or your future. You are simply here, and here is enough. The highs and lows of awakening no longer define your journey. You are no longer measuring your progress, no longer chasing some greater level of realization. Because now you understand, awakening was never about becoming something more. It was about becoming less entangled, less identified, less attached. And in that you have gained everything. You no longer feel separate from life. You no longer feel separate from others. You walk through the world and everything you see, every face, every moment, every small, ordinary detail feels intimately connected to you, because it is you, not in a mystical, otherworldly sense, but in the most direct and immediate way. There is no distance between you. There is no gap between you and this moment. And this is where the greatest peace is found, not in the escape from life, but in the absolute embrace of it. The idea of spiritual growth no longer preoccupies you. You don't wake up each day wondering how much further you have to go, how much more you have to learn, how much deeper you have to explore. Growth happens, of course, but it is no longer a need. It is no longer something you measure or track. You simply allow yourself to unfold naturally, without force, without expectation. And because of this, life becomes light. Even when it is difficult, even when pain arises, even when uncertainty lingers, there is a lightness, an ease, a quiet knowing that everything is as it should be. You no longer need dramatic spiritual experiences to confirm what you already know. You don't need visions, you don't need cosmic downloads, you don't need grand revelations. Because you are no longer looking outside of yourself for truth. You are no longer waiting for something extraordinary to happen. You are no longer hoping for something to take you beyond where you are. Because where you are is enough. The search is over, not because you found what you were looking for, but because you realized there was never anything missing in the first place. You have stepped beyond awakening, beyond the highs and lows, beyond the seeking and striving, beyond the need to define or control your experience. You have arrived. But the most beautiful part, you were here all along. And now, you see it, now you understand. There is no end to awakening, there is only life. And you are finally, fully living it. And so a new kind of life begins. Not one that looks different on the outside. Your routines may not change, your daily responsibilities may remain the same, but internally everything is different. Life moves, but you are no longer caught in it. You experience emotions, but you are no longer controlled by them. You interact with others, but you are no longer seeking anything from them. There is no longer a sense of needing to be on a path. There is no longer the belief that there is something more to get to, something higher to attain. You understand now that every moment, no matter how simple, no matter how ordinary, is complete in itself. There is no higher state than this. You walk through the world with a quiet presence, an unshakable peace, not because you are detached, not because you don't care, but because you are no longer resisting anything. You are no longer at war with reality. When people talk about spiritual awakening, they often imagine an end point, a final transformation where all struggle disappears, where life becomes effortless and filled with endless bliss. But the truth is, awakening doesn't erase life, doesn't make you immune to challenges, to loss, to change. What it does is remove the illusion that any of it was ever a problem. Pain still comes, but suffering does not. Confusion may arise, but there is no panic. There are moments of sadness, of uncertainty, of frustration, but none of it sticks, because none of it is you. You no longer live with the need to define yourself. You are not trying to be awakened. You are not trying to be anything at all. You have released the need for identity, the need for labels, the need to make sense of it all. And in that space there is freedom. People may ask you what you believe, what path you follow, what philosophy you hold, but inside you know. The truth cannot be contained in words. It cannot be put into concepts or confined to a single perspective. Life is too vast, too fluid, too infinite to be captured by any belief system. You no longer seek validation, no longer need others to understand your experience. You have nothing to prove, no need to convince anyone of anything. If someone is ready to hear the truth, they will hear it. If they are not, you do not try to change them. You let life unfold as it will. there is a deep compassion that arises. Not a forced compassion, not an idea that you should love all beings, but a natural, effortless kindness that flows from the realization that we are all the same. That every person, no matter how lost they seem, no matter how trapped in illusion they appear to be, is moving through their own journey at exactly the right pace. And so you stop judging. You stop resisting others for being who they are. You stop wishing for people to change. You meet them where they are, just as you meet yourself where you are. And the most unexpected thing, you find joy. Not the fleeting joy that comes and goes with circumstances, but a deep, quiet joy that has no reason, no cause, a joy that is simply there, like the warmth of the sun, like the stillness of the night sky. You find beauty in the smallest things, the way the wind moves through the trees, the way a child laughs, the way light reflects on water. You are no longer waiting for something extraordinary to happen. You see the extraordinary in everything. And because of this, you are never bored. You are never restless. You are never looking for the next thing, the next goal, the next destination. Life is enough, exactly as it is. The need for escape is gone. You don't need to run to retreats, to books, to practices in order to find peace. Those things may still come, but they are no longer needed, because the peace you once searched for is now your natural state. You don't worry about the future. You don't cling to the past. Time moves, but you remain here, always here. And when the world does pull you back into its noise, when old habits arise, when the mind starts spinning its stories again, you do not panic. You do not feel like you have lost something, because now you know you can never lose what you are. Or, stillness is always here, peace is always here, you only have to stop, you only have to notice. And so, this is the final realization, not an ending, not a conclusion, but a simple truth that you now live by. There is nowhere to go, there is nothing to attain, you are already home, and you always have been. And now, as you sit in this moment, you realize something profound. There is nothing left to chase. There is no final realization waiting for you, no deeper truth that must be uncovered, no final state that you must reach. You have already arrived. You have always been here. The entire journey, the seeking, the questioning, the awakening itself, was never about finding something outside of yourself. It was always leading you back to what was already within you. It was never about reaching some mystical state of enlightenment. It was about stripping away everything that was never real to begin with. The illusion of self-improvement, the illusion of becoming more spiritual, the illusion that you needed to be anything other than what you already are. It all fades away. And what remains is so simple, so obvious, that you almost laugh at the idea that you ever looked for it anywhere else. This moment, this breath, this awareness. It was never hidden. It was never something you had to earn. It was always here, patiently waiting for you to see it. And now you do. Now, life is no longer a problem to solve. The mind is no longer an enemy to conquer. The future is no longer something to be feared or controlled. There is only the effortless unfolding of what is, moment by moment, with no resistance, no grasping, no need for anything to be different. And yet, paradoxically, this is where life truly begins. Because now you are fully in it, fully alive, fully present, fully awake. Not in the way the mind once imagined awakening to be, but in the most natural, most effortless way possible. There is a peace that does not leave, even when chaos arises. There is a stillness that remains, even when the world is moving. There is a knowing that cannot be put into words, yet it is the most real thing you have ever known. You no longer ask, what happens next? Because there is no next. There is only this. And in this, everything is perfect. Not perfect in the way the mind defines perfection. Not perfect because everything is comfortable or easy, but perfect because nothing is lacking, nothing is separate, nothing is missing. You no longer fear losing this state, because you see now there is no state to lose. This is not a peak experience, not a temporary glimpse of something higher. This is reality seen clearly without the mind's distortions. You live, you move, you breathe, but there is no tension, no conflict, no weight on your shoulders. Even when difficulties arise, they pass like clouds in the sky, leaving no trace, because you are no longer holding on to anything. This is what it means to be free. Not freedom from life, not freedom from responsibility or human experience, but freedom in it. Freedom to be exactly as you are, without needing to be anything more. And the greatest realization of all, you were never not free. You were never not awake. You were never not whole. You simply forgot. But now you remember. And in this remembering, every last illusion dissolves. Nothing to seek, nothing to find, nothing to fix. Just this, just now, just life. And for the first time, it is enough.